Chapter 3014 Settling Accounts. Please continue reading on Oxful. Omicron M. After hearing the honest young man's explanation, Lu Ming roughly understood the rules of cultivation here. When one cultivated on each stone platform, they would be protected by a large formation for 3 months. After 3 months, the protection of the formation would disappear for a day. On this day, the others could compete for the stone platform. Whoever defeated the person on the stone platform could replace the other party and cultivate on the stone platform for 3 months. In other words, on the stone platform, one had to accept a challenge every 3 months. If one could defeat the challenger, they could continue to cultivate. On this stone platform, the higher you go and the closer you are to Myriad God Cliff, the better the effects of cultivation. Therefore, you can also challenge those who go up. However, the higher you are on the stone platform, the more powerful you are. Ordinary people are no match for you, the honest-looking young man explained. Lu Ming nodded, his gaze landing on the stone platform at the top. There were 3 stone platforms at the very top, and the one closest to Myriad God Cliff. 3 figures were sitting cross-legged on them. It's him. Lu Ming recognized one of them. He was one of the 4 top geniuses who had passed the Heaven's Gate. He was a half-step divine king, who had awakened the divine power source. Although the other 2 had not awakened the origin divine power factor, their abilities were probably also extremely shocking. Following that, Lu Ming's gaze moved downwards. He discovered that there were a total of 108 stone platforms. Some of the stone platforms even had people Lu Ming was familiar with. People from the Qin clan and the Jin clan. Lu Ming's eyes were filled with coldness. On a few stone platforms sat people from the Qin clan. These people were the ones who had wanted to surround and kill Lu Ming. In addition, there were also acquaintances in the Jin family. Jin Xing was one of them. Everyone's here, hee. Lu Ming sneered, his voice cold. By the way, brother, how long can each of us cultivate up there? Lu Ming asked again. Everyone can cultivate for 3 years. After 3 years, you can't go up, unless you wait for the next time you come in. The honest-looking young man explained. Lu Ming nodded. It was no wonder that a few of the top talents were not around. Logically speaking, those talents would not miss such a place. It seemed that some of them had already cultivated for 3 years. Perhaps some of them were not in a hurry. After all, they could stay in Starmoon Ancient City for 10 years. Everyone stood in the air and waited quietly. Many of them were ready for a big battle at any time. There were more wolves than meat. There were only 108 stone platforms in total, but there were thousands of people here. Even if each person could only cultivate for 3 years, many people could not go up there to cultivate. If they wanted to go up there to cultivate, they could only compete with their strength. Very quickly a day had passed. Someone's 3-month deadline is coming up. Suddenly someone spoke, his eyes shining. Many people's gazes fell on a young man with a scale between his brows in the bottommost row. People from the Qin family, what a coincidence. I want this seat. Lu Ming muttered. At this moment, the light barrier around the Qin clan's heavens chosen suddenly began to glow. When the light reached its limit, it quickly dimmed. Then the heavens chosen opened his eyes. At the same time, at least 100 figures rushed out towards the stone platform. I want this stone platform. Who do you think you are? Get lost. This challenge is mine. It's mine. Angry roars rang out one after another, and then a brilliant divine light filled the air. Hundreds of people fought fiercely in the air. Everyone wanted to step onto the stone platform and obtain the right to challenge. Whoever stepped onto the stone platform first would have the right to challenge. Boom, boom, boom. In the void, there were constant rumbles and terrifying explosions. All kinds of divine light and attacks were constantly colliding. However, the young men who were cultivating on the stone platform didn't seem to feel anything. It was obvious that the light shield formed by the formation protected them and even isolated them from the outside world. This way, they could cultivate in peace and not be disturbed by the outside world. A total of more than 100 heaven's favorites were fighting intensely. For a moment, no one could step onto the stone platform. This was because whoever approached the stone platform would be attacked by the others. A Heaven's Pride expert let out a blood-curdling screech. He wanted to rush up the stone platform, but he was attacked by the others. Dozens of divine lights drowned that heaven's pride expert. After the blood-curdling screech, that heaven's pride expert vanished into thin air, leaving nothing behind. The killing continued. People were constantly injured, and people were retreating. The remaining people didn't make a move, because some of them knew their own limitations. They knew that they weren't strong enough, and wouldn't be able to compete even if they went up. I want this stone platform. At this moment, the corners of Lu Ming's mouth curled into a faint smile. His figure suddenly moved, and he dashed toward the stone platform like a bolt of lightning. His speed was astonishing as he rapidly approached the stone platform. However, the others had also noticed Lu Ming. You're looking for death. Get lost. Many people made their moves. In an instant, dozens of divine lights shot toward Lu Ming. The Kuan Peng of the ninth heaven, Kuan Peng. Lu Ming shouted in a low voice, and used the 9 heavenly Kuan Peng technique. His divine power condensed into a Kuan Peng. With a flap of its wings, his figure suddenly accelerated and dodged the attacks. In the next moment, he landed on the stone platform. So fast! Many people's hearts trembled. They actually didn't have the time to make a move just now. After that, many people sighed. It seemed that they wouldn't have a share of this stone platform. Once someone stepped onto the stone platform, the others would no longer be able to compete. Seeing that Lu Ming had stepped onto the stone platform, the battle in the air stopped, and everyone's eyes fell on Lu Ming. Stepping onto the stone platform was only the first step. In order to obtain the right to cultivate on the stone platform, one had to defeat the person who had cultivated before. Unless the other party voluntarily withdrew, after the 3 years were up. Lu Ming, it's you. The Qing clan's paragon looked at Lu Ming with a cold gaze. Of course it's me. It's time to settle the score with you all for besieging me that day. Lu Ming said coldly. Settle accounts? He just you? The Qing clan's paragon sneered as a powerful aura emanated from his body. 9th level celestial deity. The cultivation of this Qing clan's heaven's pride expert was at the 9th level of the heavenly deity realm. Furthermore, this time, he had already cultivated on this stone platform for half a year. The degree of his divine power awakening had increased by a lot, and had already reached 50%. Lu Ming wanted to settle scores with him? You're looking for death. Boom. Lu Ming could not be bothered to waste his breath on him. He took a step forward and a huge aura rose. All the divine power in his body exploded. The divine power on the surface of his body jumped and burned like flames. After that, the battle formula was activated. However, Lu Ming did not use his ancient god body. With Lu Ming's current cultivation, he did not need the ancient god body to deal with a 9th-tier celestial god with a 50% awakened divine power. A terrifying aura rushed toward the other party like an avalanche. The other party's pupils suddenly widened and he exclaimed, Your aura! How is this possible? The Qin family's youth was frightened. How could a 5th-level celestial deity have such a terrifying aura? If they wanted to challenge him, they could only do so 3 months later. Soon the day came. There was a light screen on the stone platform that enveloped Lu Ming. At this moment, Lu Ming's vision turned black, and he was completely plunged into darkness. Boom! Boom! All of a sudden, Lu Ming felt a terrifying roar coming from outside. The world shook violently. Lu Ming quickly opened his eyes, and was shocked by the scene in front of him. In the universe, a group of giants were fighting. The so-called giants were simply too huge. Each giant stood in the universe, and was astonishingly burly. Their fists were bigger than a planet. Ancient God, or primitive god spirit. Lu Ming's heart was beating violently. All of them were primitive gods. A group of primitive godly spirits were fighting fiercely. The universe was boiling, and the stars were falling like meteors. Some stars exploded like fireworks. This was the true destruction of the world. In such a great battle, it would not take long for a galaxy to be destroyed. Not good. Suddenly, Lu Ming's expression changed drastically. This was because he saw a ray of divine power rushing towards him. This divine power was filled with an ancient aura. After awakening the origin factor of divine power, It was somewhat similar to this aura, but there was a huge difference. This was the difference in essence. That was because this was the original divine power controlled by the original God. Lu Ming's heart was in his throat. His entire body was tense. He wanted to escape, but he realized that he could not. Am I going to die here? Lu Ming had a thought. That divine power was too terrifying. If he was hit, he would definitely not be left with even a bit of residue. Even a peak divine king, or a figure above divine king, would be killed instantly by such a divine power, let alone him. The speed of the divine power was too fast. Lu Ming had only had a few thoughts, and the divine power had already struck him. However, Lu Ming did not feel anything at all. Lu Ming looked at himself and touched himself. He realized that he was fine. It was as if he was transparent. The divine power rushed through his body and struck a huge planet in the distance. The planet exploded with a boom. I'm fine. Are these all illusions? Lu Ming swallowed his saliva and secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Following that, he carefully observed. Indeed, all of this was an illusion and not real. Perhaps it was a projection from countless years ago. Then Lu Ming thought of the god statues on the Myriad god cliff. Perhaps they were projected by the god statues. However, the fluctuation of divine power can be felt. Different primitive gods control different divine powers. Lu Ming observed carefully, his eyes bright. These primordial divine powers controlled different types of origin divine power. Many of the divine-grade divine powers now, if they were traced back to their roots, were most likely evolved from these origin divine powers. If he could find the origin divine power that had the same source as the divine-grade divine power, he controlled and studied it carefully, he would definitely gain a lot. No wonder it was said that this place had a great effect on one's comprehension of divine power, and one could even use it to awaken the origin divine power factor. I control 7 types of divine-grade divine power. Which one should I cultivate first? I'd better first train in hegemon level divine power. In the end, Lu Ming decided to cultivate the god's divine power first. The god's divine power was the divine-grade divine power that he had mastered the earliest. He had the deepest understanding of it, and it would definitely be easier to cultivate it. But first, he had to find a primordial god that controlled the original divine power and had the same origin as the chief divine power. Let's go! Lu Ming tried to move. With a single thought, his body flew out at an unimaginable speed. Around him, huge gods were fighting fiercely. However, Lu Ming was not affected at all. He was pierced through. That is the origin Shun power of the Sun Shin power. Lu Ming saw a primordial divine power radiating with light all over its body. It was more resplendent than a star. When it went crazy, it grabbed a star as a weapon and threw it at its enemy. It was extremely powerful. This primordial godly spirit controlled origin Shun power, which was similar to the Sun Shin power. Lu Ming happened to be in control of the Sun Shin power. Let's first find the origin divine power of a ruler's divine power. Lu Ming suppressed his excitement and continued to search. There are a total of 108 stone platforms. On average, it takes less than a day for someone's time to expire. Let's wait a little longer. Some people were discussing. Lu Ming waited for a long time, but no one challenged him. It seems that no one will challenge me. Lu Ming's lips curled into a smile. However, he did not sit cross-legged. He looked at the stone platform above him. The higher one went, the closer one was to the stone platform in Myriad God Cliff, and the better the effect. Lu Ming was no longer satisfied with the current stone platform. He wanted to choose a stone platform with a better effect for cultivation. After all, everyone could only cultivate for 3 years, and he could not waste time. Don't tell me that Lu Ming also wants the stone platform above? After everyone saw Lu Ming's status, they started to make guesses. At the same time, many people's eyes flickered. If Lu Ming left the current stone platform, it would be ownerless, and they could fight for it. At this moment, someone on the stone platform above Lu Ming emitted a glow. The time was almost up. What a coincidence! Lu Ming's lips curled into a cold smile. This person was actually Jin Xing. Lu Ming was initially considering whether he should wait for Jin Xing's time to run out and chase him off the stone platform. He did not expect that his time was up already. What else could it be if not a coincidence? Jin Xing opened his eyes and looked around. Buzz! At this moment Lu Ming moved. His speed was shockingly fast. In a flash, he appeared on Jin Xing's stone platform. Lu Ming! At the sight of Lu Ming, Jin Xing's expression changed drastically. Kill! Lu Ming took a step forward and made his move. The ice chains flew out and wrapped around Jin Xing. However, the moment Lu Ming made his move, Jin Xing also moved. He turned into a golden light and rushed out of the stone platform. Jin Xing was indeed one of the 4 heroes of the Jin family. He was very decisive. The moment he saw Lu Ming, he knew that he was no match for him. Without any hesitation, he rushed out of the stone platform. In this way, when Lu Ming's attack arrived, his figure had already left. In an instant, he had rushed out of the stone platform. This guy runs quite fast, Lu Ming muttered. Lu Ming, I won't let this go. Jin Xing stood in the crowd, his eyes cold. Charge! That stone platform is mine. At this moment, many people finally reacted and rushed to the stone platform, where Lu Ming was previously. A chaotic battle had begun. After a chaotic battle, the stone platform was finally occupied by a 9th-level celestial deity. As for Lu Ming, he had defeated Jin Xing in a challenge. Naturally, no one could challenge him. Let's see the effects of this stone platform first. Lu Ming sat cross-legged and waited quietly. A day later, a light screen enveloped Lu Ming. His vision went dark again. The next moment, he came to another universe and saw a group of primitive gods fighting. This time, Lu Ming quickly found the origin divine energy of the ruler's divine power and began to study it. As expected, the effects of the stone platform above were different. His comprehension was much clearer. Lu Ming's degree of awakening of the ruler's divine power increased at an even faster speed. The further he progressed, the more difficult it was to improve. However, the effect here was better. Lu Ming's improvement speed was faster. After 3 months, his awakening had reached about 45%. Can other people improve so quickly? Lu Ming could not help but think this way. At this rate, he would be able to reach 80% or 90% in no time. Did the others improve so quickly? From his previous observations, he didn't think so. I'm indeed a cultivation genius. Lu Ming gave a very narcissistic smile. Then he stood up and waited for others to challenge him. Many people hesitated. For a moment, no one dared to fight Lu Ming. I'm going to fight. Finally, someone could not help but rush up to the stone platform and stand opposite Lu Ming. Lu Ming, let's have a fight. It's just a sparring session. Let's not fight to the death. How about it? The young man said. He was not confident in facing Lu Ming. That was why he said that. Sure. Lu Ming smiled faintly. He had no enmity with this person, so there was no need to fight to the death. Boom. The young man's aura exploded, and his divine power burned. The young man's cultivation base was extremely close to the half-step divine king realm. Challenging the second row. Please continue reading on Oxville. Omicron M. The young man who challenged Lu Ming had a cultivation base that was infinitely close to the half-step divine king realm. His aura was surging and shocking. Lu Ming, take my strongest move. The young man roared. A battle axe appeared in his hand. The battle axe rapidly grew in size and became 10,000 meters wide. Slash. The young man roared. He became one with his axe and attacked with all his might, slashing at Lu Ming. In an instant, Lu Ming activated the fourfold combat power of the battle character formula. 9 ice chains flew out and enveloped Lu Ming, wrapping him tightly. Boom! The battle axe hit the ice chain's defense and exploded with a loud bang. The force spread in all directions, and the shock waves spread in all directions. The ice chain shook a few times, and then was fine. Lu Ming did not move at all. On the other hand, the young man's body was pushed back by the force of the rebound. He landed on the stone platform and was pushed back dozens of steps. Impressive. I'm not your match. Goodbye. The young man cupped his fists and left the stone platform. He had already used his strongest move and knew that he was no match for Lu Ming. He might as well admit defeat and leave. Lu Ming was not bothered by it. After a faint smile, he shifted his gaze to the stone platform further up. He had already experienced the stone platforms here. Although the cultivation speed was not bad, there were better ones. Why not choose the better one? Lu Ming's gaze swept across the first and second rows. They were his target. In the first row, there was a top genius who had awakened the origin divine power factor. Lu Ming was not his match yet, so he naturally would not challenge him. As for the other two people, Lu Ming estimated that they were very close to awakening the original divine power factor. Their degree of awakening was estimated to be more than 90%. Lu Ming was not confident in dealing with them. Lu Ming's gaze swept across the second row. Lu Ming planned to challenge the second row first. He would challenge the geniuses in the first row after he had awakened more divine power. Lu Ming waited quietly. In the second row, Lu Ming saw people from the Qin and Jin families. The two clans each had a heaven's favorite in the second row. You too. Lu Ming planned to challenge the Qin and Jin families' paragons when their time was up. They would challenge whoever arrived first. Not long after, someone in the third row had reached their time limit. Lu Ming's eyes flickered, but he did not make a move. Lu Ming isn't making a move. Is he waiting for the second or first row? Someone guessed in surprise. Wait for the second and first row? No way. Lu Ming was that powerful. The first three rows are all half-step Divine King Heaven's favorites with high levels of divine power awakening. Look at the Heaven's favorite in the third row. He's not challenging him, and he's just standing there without cultivating. He must want to challenge the person above. Many people were discussing. However, no one went up to challenge the genius in the third row. That genius was very strong, and there were no half-step Divine Kings. Normally, half-step Divine Kings could get a spot without any pressure. Only those below the half-step Divine King realm would compete for it. After waiting for a day, no one accepted the challenge. The young man continued to cultivate. As for Lu Ming, he stood on the stone platform and continued to wait. His body was covered in a layer of light. He had a lot of freedom to cultivate here. Even if the day was up, he could choose not to cultivate. Take Lu Ming for example. A day had passed. As long as he did not enter the cultivation state, he would not enter the universe to cultivate. It would only be a waste of time to waste time. Lu Ming waited for another 2 days. On this day, there was finally some movement on the second row of stone platforms. A young man in a golden robe was emitting light. Have we finally arrived? Lu Ming muttered as a cold glint flashed in his eyes. This golden-robed young man was truly a genius of the Jin family. The young man from the Jin family opened his eyes, but he still sat there quietly without any intention of getting up. He didn't think anyone would dare to challenge him. However, in the next moment his eyes narrowed. Someone had appeared on his stone platform. Lu Ming. Lu Ming rushed to his stone platform at the first moment. It's you, Lu Ming. You want to challenge me? The paragon of the Jin family was stunned when he saw Lu Ming. He was clearly surprised. Can't I? Lu Ming smiled faintly. Of course you can. If you want to die, it'll naturally fulfill your wish. The young man from Jin family laughed. Jin Ju, you have to underestimate him. He killed Qin Mu with a few moves earlier. At this moment, Jin Xing's voice came. Jin Xing, who had been watching from afar, reminded him. He killed Qin Mu. What? Jin Ju was slightly taken aback. It seems like your strength has exceeded my expectations. Even though he said that, Jin Ju was still very confident. Qin Mu was only a 9th level heavenly god. On the other hand, Jin Ju was a half-step divine king. Furthermore, the degree of his divine powers awakening had already reached about 60%. His abilities were far from what Qin Mu could compare to. While the two of them were conversing, the others had already started to fight for the stone platform that Lu Ming had used earlier. Lu Ming and Jin Ju did not make a move. They were waiting for the others to decide the outcome before making a move. Not long after, Lu Ming's stone platform was occupied by a young man. Now it's your turn. Jin Ju looked at Lu Ming and sneered. Golden light emanated from his body. The golden radiance was extremely dense, like a golden armor that enveloped him. Bang! Jin Ju took a step forward and his palm turned pure gold. A golden combat sword appeared in his hand, and he slashed it at Lu Ming. Roar! Ancient god! Lu Ming roared. His body swelled up and turned into an ancient god. Lu Ming had no choice but to use his ancient god body against a half-step divine king. Otherwise, he would not be a match for his opponent in his normal form. However, Lu Ming held back. After he used the ancient god body, his battle character formula only doubled his combat power. As long as it was enough. Break the air. Lu Ming thrust his spear forward. The spear's gleam collided with the opponent's golden sword radiance, creating a terrifying shock wave. Thump! After Lu Ming launched his first attack, he took a step forward and continued to attack. He brandished his spear and launched a storm-like attack. Void-breaking sword. Jin Ju let out a long roar, and golden divine light surged as he slashed out golden sword marks. This sword mark was truly terrifying. It was incomparably sharp, and seemed to be able to cut through everything. Clang! Clang! In the blink of an eye, the two sides had exchanged dozens of moves. The Jin family's space-breaking secret technique is indeed powerful. Even Lu Ming could not help but sigh at the power of the Jin family's secret technique. The Jin family was ranked high among all the families in the 9 absolute Heavenly King mansion. It was not just talk, but they had fought their way to the top with their strength. Ice chains. In the middle of the battle, Lu Ming had a thought and 9 ice chains flew out. Don't want it. I do please continue reading on Oxful. Omicron M. The 9 ice chains wrapped around Jin Ju, exuding a shocking coldness. Break! Break! Jin Ju shouted as he slashed at the ice chains with his void-breaking sword, trying to break them. However, a series of metal clanging sounds rang out and sparks flew in all directions. The ice chains were completely undamaged, but they were sent flying by the powerful force. However, after the ice chain flew out, it turned and continued to attack Jin Ju. So tough. How is this possible? Jin Ju's expression changed drastically, and he was in disbelief. The ice chains were only condensed by Lu Ming using a secret skill, and were not any divine weapon. He had not expected that the void-splitting sword could not cut it. Wang. At this moment, Lu Ming himself had also charged forward. He swung his long spear down, and a crescent-shaped spear radiance slashed down at Jin Ju. Jin Ju hurriedly blocked. Although he blocked Lu Ming's attack, the ice chains came at him again. Clang! 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 He waved his sword and continuously slashed at the ice chains, shaking them away. However, the shocking chill of the ice chains crawled up Jin Ju's body through his sword. The 9th ice chain in particular had an even more astonishing chill. Under the stimulation of the divine power of the moon, its power became more and more terrifying. The layer of golden light on Jin Ju's body was covered in a layer of frost. His movements also became stiff, and his strength was greatly affected. Kill! Lu Ming let out a long howl, and seized the opportunity to launch a storm of attacks, beginning to suppress Jin Ju in all aspects. In fact, if Lu Ming went all out, he could easily crush Jin Ju. However, Lu Ming felt that there might be a big battle later on, so it was better to keep some trump cards. Bang! After a few more moves, Jin Ju was swept by Lu Ming's spear gleam. The protective divine power that covered his body shattered, and his body flew out horizontally, spitting out a large mouthful of blood. Damn it, brat, I'll settle this score another day. Jin Ju roared, and was about to rush out of the stone platform. Another day? You still want another day? You're really naive. Lu Ming's cold voice was heard. The 9 ice chains grew longer rapidly and danced in the sky like an inescapable net, blocking Jin Ju's retreat. Boom! Jin Ju's attack landed on the ice chain, but the ice chain only trembled. Jin Ju's body was blocked. Lu Ming, what do you want to do? Don't tell me you want to kill me? Do you dare? Jin Ju roared. He was a top-notch Heaven's Pride expert of the Jin clan. The Jin clan was one of the top aristocratic families in the 9 absolute Heavenly King manor. Lu Ming, a mere piece of trash from the Qin Heaven starfield, dared to kill him? Hee hee. Lu Ming's reply was a cold sneer. Then, Lu Ming took a step forward, and the spear's gleam was as heavy as a mountain, pressing down on Jin Ju. Bang! With one side losing and the other gaining, Jinju was even less of a match for Lu Ming. He was sent flying by one move and crashed into the ice chains. He was severely injured and kept spitting out blood. Whoosh! The ice chains seized the opportunity to bind Jinju. Let me go. Lu Ming, I order you to let me go. Jinju roared. Order me? You're just a prisoner, and you're ordering me around? Are you out of your mind? Lu Ming was so angry that he laughed. He waved the ice chain and smashed Jin Xing to the ground. Instantly, Jinju was smashed into a dead dog. Lu Ming, you'd better let him go. Otherwise, the Jin family will not let you off. You should know the power of the Jin family in the 9 Absolute Heavenly King Mansion. Outside the arena, Jin Xing shouted and threatened Lu Ming. Brat, let me go. I don't believe you dare to kill me. Jinju also roared. At this point, he still did not believe that Lu Ming would dare to kill him, especially in front of so many people. What an idiot, I'll send you on your way. Lu Ming sighed. Then, an icy cold killing intent filled the air. Enveloped by this killing intent, Jinju shivered. At this moment, he felt a chill in his heart, and his eyes revealed fear. He had a feeling that Lu Ming would really kill him. Lu Ming really dared to. No, don't, Jinju shouted in fear. He was finally scared. You don't want it? I want it. Let's go, Lu Ming said calmly. He thrust his spear forward and pierced through the space between Jinju's eyebrows. Jinju twitched and stopped breathing. He was killed by Lu Ming on the spot. Lu Ming! Outside the arena, Jin Xing roared with anger. He did not expect that Lu Ming would dare to kill the top talent of the Jin family. Was he not afraid of the Jin family's revenge? I'll kill whoever wants to kill me. Who cares who they are? Lu Ming said coldly. He had experienced so much along the way that he had long understood one thing. When dealing with enemies, one must be ruthless. If there was a chance to kill, one must kill. Because your enemy will not stop just because you let him go. On the contrary, they will take revenge even more. Even if he didn't kill Jinju, the Jin clan wouldn't let him go. Since that was the case, why not kill him? Jin Xing shut up. He knew that Lu Ming was a ruthless character. Threats would not have an effect on him. Lu Ming, just you wait. Jin Xing roared in his heart, brewing a vicious plan. After killing Jinju, Lu Ming kept his storage ring and waited quietly. A day later, a light screen enveloped Lu Ming. He sat cross-legged and entered the starry sky of the universe. The effects of the second row of stone platforms were extraordinary. Lu Ming's cultivation speed was very fast. His degree of awakening of the ruler's divine power was also rapidly increasing. 50%, 55%. Looking at Lu Ming sitting cross-legged on the stone platform, Jin Xing's eyes were filled with ferocious killing intent. He could not wait to cut Lu Ming into 8 pieces. Unfortunately, Lu Ming had the protection of the array. He could only dream about it. This guy killed Qin Mu? After a period of time, one of the Qin clan's heaven's favorites ended his cultivation. He had already been cultivating on the stone platform for 3 years. He couldn't continue cultivating, so he left the stone platform. Jin Xing told him the news as soon as he left the stone platform. That's right. Not only did this person kill Qin Mu, but he also killed the proud son of heaven of my Jin clan, Jinju. Jin Xing gritted his teeth and said, What? He even killed Jinju. Is he that strong? The Qin clan's paragon was also shocked. This kid is a monster. He must be eliminated. Jin Xing gritted his teeth and said, Don't worry. Qin Wukong, the pride of the Qin family, is cultivating in the second row. The degree of his divine power awakening has long reached 90%. After this cultivation, I'm afraid it's very close to 100%. In addition, he has broken through to the 8th level with a few of his divine skills. It's enough to kill Lu Ming. The Qin clan's chosen said coldly. That's great. Jin Xing was also overjoyed. The person they were talking about was the genius of the Qin clan, who was cultivating in the second row. Time flew by, and soon 2 months had passed. At this moment Qin Wukong, the Qin clan's prodigy, who was cultivating in the second row, woke up. Chapter 3019 Rapid Improvement. Please continue reading on Oxful. Omicron M. The Qin clan's proud son of heaven, Qin Wukong, had ended his cultivation and awakened. After he regained his senses, Qin Wukong stood up and looked at two of the young men in the first row. Now my awakening of divine power has reached 99%. I can challenge the first row and use the power of the first row to completely awaken the origin divine power factor. Qin Wushang mumbled, his eyes brimming with confidence. Before, his Shen power had not awakened to such a high level, so he had not dared to challenge the first row. After a period of cultivation, he had full confidence. Of course, he did not dare to challenge the genius who had awakened the origin divine power factor. He wanted to challenge the other two people. Cousin Wukong. At this time, the Qin clan's heaven's favorite in the crowd shouted, "Is there something?" Qin Wukong turned around and said, "Qin Mu has been killed." The Qin clan's chosen said, Qin Mu was killed? Who is it? Which aristocratic family did it?" Upon hearing these words, a cold killing intent erupted from Qin Wukong's body. His cold gaze swept across the surroundings. The expressions of those who were caught by his gaze changed, and their hearts beat faster. Among the Heaven's Pride experts in the Universal Camp, who were below the God King stage, Qin Wukong was definitely considered as one of the top experts. "It's him, Lu Ming. It's Lu Ming who killed Qin Mu." The Qin clan's paragon pointed at Lu Ming, who was cultivating. Subconsciously, Qin Wukong's gaze shifted to Lu Ming. He could not help but be stunned. If he remembered correctly, this position belonged to Jin Ju. Why did it become Lu Ming's? Lu Ming, he can kill Qin Mu? Qin Wukong's deep voice sounded with some doubt. "This kid is very powerful. You can't just look at his cultivation." Jin Ju, the pride of the Jin clan, was also killed by him. Jin Xing said, "What?" This time, Qin Wukong was truly shocked. Qin Mu was still fine, as he was only a 9th level heavenly god. However, Jin Ju was no small matter. He was in existence at the half-step divine king realm. Yet he had actually died at the hands of Lu Ming. This brat can't be left alive. Qin Wukong had this thought. "What is this kid's cultivation level?" Qin Wukong asked. 5th level celestial deity, but his combat strength is shocking. At least equivalent to a half-step divine king, with a degree of 70 to 80% divine power awakening. Jin Xing said, "Such strength? Alright, leave this brat to me. When his 3 months are up, I'll challenge him and kill him here." Qin Wukong's voice was incomparably cold. Although Lu Ming could kill Jin Ju, he was confident that he could kill Lu Ming as well. Now his Shen power had awakened to 99%. Adding on the fact that the maturity of his Shen skills was shocking, he was confident. Apart from the few people who had awakened the origin divine power factor, he was invincible among those below the God King level. With Brother Wukong taking action, that brat is dead for sure. Jin Xing was overjoyed. He looked at Lu Ming with an even more ferocious gaze. Next, Qin Wukong did not cultivate. He stood on the stone platform and waited quietly. Naturally, Lu Ming was completely unaware of all this. He was completely focused on comprehending the god's divine power. As expected of the second row of stone platforms, the effect was simply too good. It was not something that the lower rows could compare to. The difference in effect was tens of times. Lu Ming's awakening level of the ruler's divine power was rapidly increasing. With the increase in the degree of awakening of the god's divine power, Lu Ming's strength had also improved. Very quickly, 3 months had passed. The universe and the starry sky disappeared. Lu Ming opened his eyes on the stone platform. 88%. Lu Ming muttered. The degree of awakening of the ruler's divine power had reached 88%. Lu Ming had only been cultivating here for 9 months, and his awakening of ruler's divine power had increased from 1 to 2% to 88%. If others were to know about this, their jaws would probably drop. This speed was too shocking. I really don't know how amazing the effects of the first row are. With my current strength, I should be able to challenge the first row. Lu Ming muttered and then stood up. Boom! As soon as Lu Ming stood up, he felt a strong pressure pressing down on him. At the same time, a young man appeared in front of him, staring at him coldly. This young man was naturally Qin Wukong. As soon as Lu Ming woke up, Qin Wukong rushed to Lu Ming's stone platform. It's him. I didn't look for him, but he did look for me. That's good. Lu Ming revealed a smile. Kid, you can still laugh at a time like this? Qin Wukong said coldly. Why can't I laugh? You're here to die, so of course I have to laugh. Lu Ming continued to smile. I'm here to die. Haha, looks like you're very confident after defeating a few people. I want to see how strong your combat power is as a 5th-level celestial deity. Qin Wukong said coldly. As he spoke, a dazzling radiance burst forth from his body. His divine power burned like flames, stirring up a terrifying gale that crushed toward Lu Ming. An ancient aura bloomed wantonly. The origin divine power factor, no, it hasn't awakened yet. Lu Ming's eyes narrowed. He thought that Qin Wukong had awakened the divine force factor. However, after sensing carefully, he realized that Qin Wukong had not awakened the divine force factor at all. However, he was not far from awakening it. So powerful. I'm afraid Qin Wukong's divine power has already awakened to 99%. Among the crowd, there were some knowledgeable people who had seen through Qin Wukong's background. With such an aura, he's indeed just one step away from completely awakening the origin divine power factor. This will be interesting. Many people were discussing. Lu Ming was a monstrous existence. He was able to kill a half-step divine king like Jinju, even though he was only at the 5th-level heavenly deity realm. Then could he fight with Qin Wukong? Boom. At this moment, Qin Wukong made his move. He threw out a punch, and a huge fist print headed towards Lu Ming at an astonishing speed. Ancient God Body. Without hesitation, Lu Ming cast his Ancient God Body and activated the battle character formula that multiplied his combat power by 4. Facing an opponent like Qin Wukong, Lu Ming had no choice but to go all out. The long spear trembled, and a dazzling spear radiance broke through the air, piercing toward Qin Wukong's fist imprint. Boom! The spear radiance and the fist print collided, causing a terrifying energy wave to erupt and sweep in all directions. Fortunately, the heavens favorites cultivating on the other stone platforms were protected by the formation. The energy didn't affect them in the slightest. Otherwise, they would have been seriously injured or even killed. Buzz! The spear radiance shook continuously, and then exploded. At the same time, the huge fist print also exploded. I blocked it. Lu Ming could actually block Qin Wukong's punch. Many people were shocked. Qin Wukong's eyes also focused. This kid is a monster. Kill him. Qin Wukong gave a low roar and pushed his divine power to the limit. The power of his divine power, which had awakened to 99%, burst out in full force, turning into a terrifying fist print that blasted toward Lu Ming. The Great Battle with Qin Wukong. Please continue reading on Oxful. Omicron M. Qin Wuxiang's strength was extremely terrifying. His divine power had awakened to 99%, and its power was astonishing. Not only was it extremely condensed, but it also had a trace of the characteristics of origin divine power, which was full of destructive power. Using this divine power to display the 7-injury fist was not something the Qin clan's heaven's favorites from before could compare to. Moon slaying. Lu Ming activated the divine energy in his body to the extreme. With the 7 types of divine-grade divine energy as the core, he condensed them into a ball and struck out along with the power of the long spear. Boom! The second collision between the two of them was even more terrifying. The stone platform under their feet shook violently. This time, the two of them were still equally matched, and it was difficult to determine who was better. The people in the audience were really shocked, especially Jin Xing. Although Lu Ming was stronger than him when they fought in the Qin Heaven Galaxy, there was a limit. It had only been a short while and Lu Ming's strength had already reached such a level. This level of strength could completely kill him in seconds. 7-injury divine fist. Qin Wukong let out a long howl and continuously punched out with both his fists. One after another, fist seals emerged from his body and pressed down on Lu Ming. Sky-breaking, moon-cutting. Lu Ming continued to cast the first 2 moves of the 3 apocalyptic strikes as he fought with Qin Wukong. The two of them fought intensely and continuously. In the blink of an eye, they had exchanged dozens of moves, but it was difficult to determine the winner. Satisfying. The more Lu Ming fought, the more excited he became. His fighting spirit grew stronger and stronger. He was more and more used to the 3 apocalyptic strikes. His divine power was endless. He was not afraid of using up his divine power. Every move he made could push the power to the extreme. As for Qin Wukong, the more he fought, the more shocked he became. Lu Ming was only a 5th-level celestial deity. With his cultivation base, he originally thought that he could easily take him down. However, Lu Ming's combat strength far exceeded his expectations. Up until now, he had not managed to take down Lu Ming. It seems that I have to go all out. Qin Wukong's eyes flashed. Then his body suddenly retreated. In the process of his retreat, a ray of green light suddenly appeared on his body. Buzz! In the next moment, Qin Wukong's figure disappeared. On the stone platform, a series of afterimages appeared. This was a terrifying speed-type divine skill. When it was used, the sky was filled with afterimages, and the speed was astonishing. With Lu Ming's current eyesight, it was difficult for an average speed to leave an afterimage in his eyes. To be able to leave an afterimage in front of his eyes, one could see how fast the speed was. It was faster than Lu Ming's eyesight. Speed-type divine skill, level 8. Lu Ming muttered. He could tell that Qin Wukong was using a speed-type divine skill. However, it had already reached the 8th level. For those below the God King level, being able to cultivate a God technique to the 8th level was already extremely impressive. For example, the Qin clan's prodigy and Jinju had only cultivated their divine skills to the 7th level. 7 Injury Divine Fist. Qin Wukong's voice rang out again. Then, from all directions, fist prints blasted toward Lu Ming and completely enveloped him. The combination of a speed-type divine skill and the 7 Injury Divine Fist sealed off all escape routes, and its power increased even more. In an instant, dozens of fist prints were blasted toward Lu Ming. Do you think you're the only one who has the 8th level of a speed-type divine skill? Lu Ming muttered. Divine energy surged on his body and condensed into a 9th heaven Kuanping. This 9th heaven Kuanping was very small and was only slightly bigger than Lu Ming. With a flap of its wings, Lu Ming disappeared from where he was. In the eyes of the others, Lu Ming had also turned into a series of afterimages as he shuttled through the many fist imprints. His speed was so fast that he was not slower than Qin Wukong. Lu Ming's 9 heavenly Kuanping technique had also been cultivated to the 8th stage. The 9 heavenly Kuanping technique was known for its long-distance flight and extremely fast speed. But now, Lu Ming had used it to move within a short distance. It was extremely powerful, and he had completely dodged Qin Wukong's fist. This kid's speed-type divine skill has also been cultivated to the 8th level. Damn it! Qin Wukong roared in his heart. He was truly shocked. Buzz! His figure came to a sudden stop. He retracted his fist force, gathered it, and rushed toward Lu Ming. In the process of rushing out, Qin Wukong opened his mouth and let out a long howl. From his mouth, a terrifying vibration was emitted. The air above Qin Wukong's mouth began to vibrate at a visible rate. In the end, it actually turned into many combat swords and slashed toward Lu Ming. Clang! Clang! Lu Ming waved his long spear to block it. When the combat sword hit the long spear trembled continuously and buzzed. Lu Ming's body trembled slightly, and he took a few steps back. What a powerful divine skill. It's the 8th level of an attack-type divine skill. Lu Ming's eyes narrowed slightly. Qin Wukong was indeed powerful. No wonder he was so confident. Not only had he cultivated a speed-type divine skill to the 8th level, but he had also cultivated an attack-type divine skill to the 8th level. Stepping onto the first row, please continue reading on Oxful. Omicron M. Boom. Qin Wukong's 7 Injury Fist print bombarded the defensive wall formed by the ice chains. The ice chains shook violently, but they managed to block it and did not shatter. Even so, there was still a terrifying force surging toward Lu Ming, forcing him to retreat. However, after Lu Ming took a few steps back, he took a step forward and soared into the sky. Then he looked down from above and waved his spear. Space breaking, space breaking. In an instant, Lu Ming executed more than a dozen moves of space piercing. More than a dozen spear lights fell like stars and blasted toward Qin Wukong. Qin Wukong was helpless. He could only continue to punch. However, even though the 7-injury divine fist would be more powerful after being injured, it also had a drawback, which was that it would add injuries to the injuries. If he couldn't finish off his opponent in a short time, his injuries would only get worse. Just like that, Lu Ming and Qin Wukong continued to fight and exchanged dozens of moves. It had to be said that Qin Wukong was a terrifying opponent. He was extremely talented. No matter if it was divine skills, secret arts, or divine power, he was not weak. If his divine power was completely awakened, and he awakened the origin factor of divine power, he would definitely be able to pass through the heaven gate. Moreover, the more injured he was, the more powerful the 7 injuries divine fist would be. Lu Ming had almost used all his means, but he could not take down Qin Wushang in a short time. However, after such a long battle, Qin Wushang's injuries were getting more and more serious, and the power of the 7-injury fist was starting to weaken. The 7-injury fist couldn't defy the heavens. When the injury reached a certain level, the power wouldn't increase, but would weaken instead. Pfft. After exchanging another blow with Lu Ming, Qin Wukong's body trembled, and he spat out a large mouthful of blood. His face was extremely pale. Detestable. Qin Wukong let out a furious roar. He gritted his teeth, and his body suddenly retreated. In an instant, he had retreated out of the range of the stone platform. He directly admitted defeat. "Why don't you dare to fight? Didn't you want to kill me? We haven't even fought to the death, and you're already leaving?" Lu Ming's mocking voice was heard. Qin Wukong gritted his teeth. His eyes were filled with crazy killing intent. However, he did not speak. He took out a healing pill and swallowed it. He focused on healing his injuries. Qin Wukong was actually defeated. Many people murmured. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they would have found it hard to believe. Qin Wukong was actually defeated at the hands of a 5th-level heavenly deity. Qin Wukong was definitely a top existence below the God King level. Other than the few geniuses who had awakened the origin divine power, he was almost an invincible figure. Such a character was actually defeated at the hands of a 5th-level celestial deity. This Lu Ming is so scary. He's indeed terrifying. If it wasn't for the fact that his cultivation base is slightly weaker, if his cultivation base were to increase and reach the half-step divine king realm. No, as long as he's at the 9th level of the celestial deity realm, I'm afraid no one below the divine king realm would be his match. Many people exclaimed. The expressions of Jin Xing, Qin Wukong, and the others turned even uglier. Hee. On the stone platform, Lu Ming swept a glance at Qin Wukong and the others before turning around. However, he did not sit down. His gaze was fixed on the 3 stone platforms in the first row. Many people were shocked. Could it be that Lu Ming wanted to challenge the people in the first row? With his strength, he might really succeed. Someone spoke, and many people nodded. Indeed, among the 3 people in the first row, other than the heaven's favorite who had awakened the primordial divine power factor, the other 2 might not be as strong as Qin Wukong. If Lu Ming could defeat Qin Wukong, he might be able to defeat the other 2 and secure a position. Many people's eyes lit up as they anticipated another peak battle. Lu Ming indeed wanted to challenge the people in the first row. He could only cultivate for 3 years here. Lu Ming had been cultivating for 9 months. Time was precious. Of course, Lu Ming would use the remaining time to cultivate in the most effective position. Lu Ming swallowed a few divine pills and refined the medicinal effects to recover. This wait lasted for 5 days. At this moment, a young man in the first row began to glow. It's him, Su Yan. Many people's hearts trembled. The person suffused with light was the genius who had awakened the origin divine power factor. His name was Su Yan. Lu Ming will definitely not challenge Su Yan. Many people shook their heads. Indeed, Lu Ming had no intention of challenging Su Yan. With his current abilities, he was no match for him. Su Yan opened his eyes and stood up, frowning. What a pity. With a low sigh, Su Yan actually stepped out and directly left the stone platform. He turned into a rainbow light and disappeared into the distance in the blink of an eye. Su Yan has left? It seems that he has been cultivating here for 3 years. The 3-year period is up. There is no point in staying here. Looking at his expression, his divine power shouldn't have awakened for the second time. Of course. How can the second awakening of Shen power be so easy? Every time Shen power awakens, the difficulty is 10 times harder than the previous one. Anyone below the God King level, who can awaken it for the first time, is already a genius among geniuses. A second awakening is simply impossible. After seeing Su Yan leave, many people began to discuss. He's actually gone. That saves me a lot of trouble. Lu Ming smiled. He took a step forward and appeared on the stone platform that Su Yan was on earlier. Lu Ming has indeed gone up. Many people shook their heads. Lu Ming stepped onto the stone platform in the first row. No one dared to challenge him. What a joke! Even Qin Wukong had been defeated. If he went up without awakening the origin divine power factor, wouldn't he be asking for humiliation? There were quite a number of people who were competing for Lu Ming's position. After a round of fighting, the stone platform was occupied by one person. As for Lu Ming, no one challenged him. After a day, a light screen enveloped Lu Ming. He sat cross-legged and entered a state of cultivation. It was still the same starry sky, and the original gods were still fighting. However, the feeling was much clearer. Very soon, Lu Ming found the origin divine energy of the ruler's divine power, and began to study it. Buzz! A streak of original divine power of a ruler's divine power flew towards Lu Ming. At first, Lu Ming was unconcerned. However, the next moment, his expression changed. This was because when the strand of divine power flew over, it actually scattered into dozens of strands. Then, each strand of divine power actually turned into a figure and charged toward Lu Ming. The cold killing intent, the ear-piercing energy, everything was so real. Lu Ming instinctively blocked it. The 9 ice chains flew out and blocked in front of him. Boom! Boom! The origin divine power of the ruler's divine power transformed into dozens of figures and attacked the ice chains. The ice chains trembled continuously. Lu Ming felt as if he had been hit by a planet. His body was thrown back, his qi and blood boiling, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. It's true. It's true. It has offensive power. Lu Ming's gaze turned solemn. This attack was not an illusion but real. Then come. Lu Ming's fighting spirit was strong. He wanted to use his ancient god body, but he realized that he could not. It was useless to trigger the battle formula. It seems like I can only rely on divine power and divine skills to resist. Lu Ming muttered. He condensed a long spear in his hand and charged forward. People from the Myriad God Cliff's vicinity would come and go every day. He came and left and came again. However, many people were very surprised when they saw Lu Ming in the first row. Isn't that Lu Ming? I remember that he's only a 4th-level heavenly deity, but he's actually able to sit in the first row? Some people were curious. Not a 4th-level celestial deity, it's a 5th-level celestial deity now. Furthermore, his combat strength is extremely terrifying and completely can't be measured with ordinary people. The person who had seen Lu Ming's move said, He extremely terrifying? What a joke! How terrifying could a 5th-level celestial deity be? The way I see it, it's you trash, right? To actually let a 5th-level celestial deity seize the first row's throne. A golden-robed young man sneered, his face full of mockery. Many people's faces turned ugly. The golden-robed young man's words had scolded everyone who had seen Lu Ming fight before, including Qin Wukong. So you're going to challenge him? Someone said. Of course, the throne in the first row is mine. The golden-robed youth laughed, his face full of confidence. Oh. The others nodded and didn't say anything else. The gold-robed young man had already scolded them, so they naturally wouldn't say anything more. They would go and remind the gold-robed young man. Very soon, Lu Ming had been cultivating for 3 months. The light screen on his body flashed, and Lu Ming opened his eyes. 98%. As expected, the further I progress, the slower the improvement. Lu Ming muttered. After 3 months of cultivation, The degree of awakening of Lu Ming's ruler's divine power had reached 98%. The effects of the first row of seats were extremely good, but the difficulty of the subsequent upgrades was getting higher and higher. If he were to cultivate in the lower rows, the degree of awakening would probably be far from 98%. I've been cultivating for a year. 2 more years should be enough for me to awaken. Lu Ming smiled faintly. At this moment, he suddenly felt a powerful aura pressing down on him. Then, he saw a young man in a golden robe land in front of him. You want to challenge me? Lu Ming was slightly stunned and asked. Initially, he thought that after he had defeated Qin Wukong, no one would dare to challenge him anymore. He did not expect that there would be someone who was stubborn. Of course, I wasn't around before, so you were able to cultivate in the first row for a while. Consider it your good fortune. Now, get out of my sight. The golden-robed young man shouted coldly, and a powerful aura emanated from his body. He was extremely arrogant. Half-step Divine King Realm. This golden-robed young man's cultivation base was not weak. He had reached the half-step Divine King Realm. No wonder he was so confident. However, the degree of his divine power awakening was far from enough. It was only about 50%. Compared to Qin Wukong, he was far inferior. Awakening the Origin Divine Power Factor. Please continue reading on Oxful. Omicron M. From the beginning to the end, the gold-robed young man had been crushed by Lu Ming. Although the golden-robed young man was a half-step divine king, he had only awakened about 50% of his divine power, and his divine skill had only reached the 7th stage. Compared to Qin Wukong, his combat strength was far inferior. Moreover, in the past few months, the degree of awakening of Lu Ming's ruler's divine power had increased by a notch. His combat strength had also improved. Naturally, it was easy for him to deal with the gold-robed young man. He could completely crush him. After more than a dozen hits, Lu Ming controlled the ice chain and swung it, throwing the gold-robed young man away. The gold-robed young man barely managed to stabilize himself in the air. He looked at Lu Ming in horror. I already told you to get lost, but you didn't. Why did you stay and be tortured? Why bother? Lu Ming's voice was heard. The golden-robed young man was so angry that he spat out another mouthful of blood. He used his movement technique and left without looking back. He didn't even compete for the other stone platforms. He was really too embarrassed. After beating up the gold-robed young man, Lu Ming continued to sit cross-legged and wait. A day later, a layer of light enveloped Lu Ming, and he continued to cultivate. Time flew by, and another 3 months passed. In the past 3 months, Lu Ming's degree of awakening of his ruler's divine power had reached 99%. However, it stopped after it reached 99%. The degree of awakening had reached 99%. The next step was to completely awaken the Origin Divine Power Factor. However, this step was extremely difficult. 1 step away, and they were worlds apart. Many people were stuck at this step for their entire lives. It was not that easy for Lu Ming to make a breakthrough. Continue cultivating. I don't believe that I can't break through. Lu Ming pondered. He would continue cultivating after a day. This time no one challenged Lu Ming. In the blink of an eye, another 3 months had passed. Lu Ming had been cultivating here for 1.5 years. After 3 months of cultivation, Lu Ming's understanding of the ruler's divine power had deepened. However, the degree of awakening was still at 99%. He continued cultivating. After that, no one challenged Lu Ming. 3 months and another 3 months. Finally, after 2 years of cultivation, Lu Ming had a breakthrough. The chief sovereign's divine power had finally awakened the Origin Divine Power Factor. Once the Origin Divine Power Factor was awakened, the divine power seemed to undergo a qualitative change. The divine power was filled with a strange factor that made the power of the divine power extremely terrifying. If the chief sovereign's divine power from before was like rotten wood, then the chief sovereign's divine power now was like steel. He was much stronger. Lu Ming felt it carefully and was overjoyed. It was no wonder prodigies who had awakened the Origin Divine Power Factor had such terrifying battle power. For example, Lan Ling's battle power was so strong that he could definitely suppress a god king like the Night Demon King. With my current combat strength, it should be easy for me to defeat Qin Wukong. I should be able to suppress a god king like the Night Devil King. Lu Ming's lips curled into a smile. The 3-month period was up again. Lu Ming opened his eyes and felt refreshed. At this moment, he felt his back jump up slightly, and a cold killing intent enveloped him. Previously, he was also shrouded in killing intent. However, Lu Ming did not have much of a reaction, because the owner of the killing intent was not a threat to him. However, this time Lu Ming's body had a natural reaction. This meant that the owner who emitted the killing intent was a threat to him. Lu Ming turned to look. Gold ingot. Lu Ming's eyes flashed. He saw Jin Xing, Jin Yuan, and the others outside the stone platform. The killing intent that made his body tense up was from Jin Yuan. Lu Ming, very good. You dare to kill the Jin clan's prodigy. Very good. Jin Yuan said coldly, when he saw Lu Ming looking at him. He did not hide his cold killing intent at all. On the side, many people kept their distance from Jin Yuan. Jin Yuan was an existence who had awakened the origin divine power factor. His strength was terrifying, and no one could stop him when he was in a frenzy. Jin family's trash, I've even invited you here. However, I don't have time to fight with you now. Lu Ming said calmly. He still had a year's time. Having said that, Lu Ming turned his head and stopped paying attention to Jin Yuan. The 3-year period will be over soon. If you don't dare to come out now, let's see how you'll hide after the 3-year period is over. I'll wait for you here. Gold Ingot said coldly. As you wish. Lu Ming left this sentence and did not speak anymore. This made Jin Yuan's gaze even colder. Lu Ming is in danger. I didn't expect that Jin Xing would invite Jin Yuan. It's indeed dangerous. Lu Ming should have left earlier. He was too greedy. He occupied the first row and wanted to cultivate for 3 years. He's going to lose his life now. Some people were discussing in low voices. No one thought that Lu Ming could fight against Jin Yuan. Although Lu Ming was powerful, there was not much of a difference between him and Qin Wukong. At most, he was slightly stronger than Qin Wukong. However, Jin Yuan was an existence who had awakened the origin divine power factor. His battle prowess was definitely much stronger than Qin Wukong's. Even if Lu Ming continued to cultivate, he would not be Jin Yuan's match. Unless Lu Ming had also awakened the origin divine power factor. However, was this possible? Lu Ming was only a 5th-level celestial deity. Before he came here, his degree of awakening was definitely not high. It was impossible for him to awaken the divine power factor in 3 years. Every time, many geniuses would enter Starmoon Ancient City, and many people would cultivate in Myriad God Cliff. Many people were aware of the effects of cultivating in Myriad God Cliff. Although the effect was much better than training outside, it was almost impossible to awaken the origin divine power factor in one training session. For people like Jin Yuan, who had awakened the origin divine power factor, it was only after they had entered this place to cultivate and left Starmoon Ancient City that they had successfully awakened it after a long period of accumulation. There were very few people in history who succeeded in their awakening after one cultivation session, let alone Lu Ming, who was only a 5th-level celestial deity. Without awakening the origin divine power factor, how could he be Jin Yuan's match? Therefore, many people felt that Lu Ming was in danger. Some people had wanted to leave, but now they stayed. They wanted to see what would happen to Lu Ming, this unparalleled genius. Lu Ming could not be bothered to think too much. A day later, he entered the state of cultivation and entered the starry sky again. Now that I've successfully awakened the ruler's divine power, it's impossible for me to make a major breakthrough in a short time if I continue to comprehend it. I'd better comprehend other divine powers. Lu Ming pondered. The first awakening was equivalent to the first firmament of divine power, but it was extremely difficult to reach the second firmament, 10 times more difficult than the first awakening. It was impossible for him to break through in a short period of time. Therefore, Lu Ming decided to study another kind of divine energy. After some consideration, Lu Ming decided to study the inextinguishable sword force. The inextinguishable sword force was mainly for attacking. If he could successfully awaken it, it would greatly increase Lu Ming's offensive power. Of course, he had to first find the origin divine power that corresponded to the inextinguishable sword force. Lu Ming shuttled through the starry sky in search of the origin divine energy corresponding to the inextinguishable sword force. The void-breaking sword. Please continue reading on Oxville. Omicron M. Earlier, Jin Yuan had only casually attacked, but now, he was serious and used the void-shattering hand. The void-severing hand was said to be able to sever the void. Under the activation of the origin divine power factor, its power was extremely powerful. It was not something people like Jin Zhu and Jin Xing could compare to. Lu Ming's eyes were solemn. Ancient God Body. Lu Ming activated his ancient god body and turned into a green-armored ancient god. Then he thrust his spear at Jin Yuan. Thump! It was as if two planets had crashed into each other. The void trembled like boiling water, and violent energy surged in all directions like the water of a vast ocean, making loud rumbling sounds. Lu Ming could feel a terrifying force coming from the long spear. He could not help but retreat. However, Jin Xing wasn't any better off. His body also floated back. Kill! Jin Yuan retreated and stepped into the air, charging toward Lu Ming. Lu Ming let out a long howl and charged forward with his spear. The two of them fought intensely. In terms of size, Lu Ming was much larger than Jin Yuan. However, Jin Yuan's strength was not any weaker than Lu Ming's. Boom! Boom! The two of them exchanged dozens of moves in a row, but there was no clear winner. Damn! How can this kid's Shim power be so strong? Jin Yuan shouted in shock. Both of them had awakened the origin divine force factor, but he was a half-step divine king, while Lu Ming was only a fifth-level heavenly god. Indeed, although Lu Ming controlled many types of divine powers, only one of them had awakened the origin divine power factor. Moreover, his cultivation was at the fifth-level heavenly god realm. He would not be able to fight against Jin Yuan by relying on only one type of ruler's divine power. However, he had other divine powers, especially the undying sword force, which had been awakened to 99%. This made up for the gap between them, with the activation of the battle character formula, which increased his battle power by 4 times. He was able to compete with Jin Yuan. Void-breaking sword slash. Jin Yuan bellowed in rage. His glabella glowed and a golden combat sword flew out, slashing at Lu Ming. Lu Ming had seen Jin Xing use this move before. He was not surprised as he was prepared for it. Dragon roars were heard as 9-clawed divine dragons that were 10,000 meters long formed above Lu Ming's head. A total of 7 pounced toward Jin Yuan. However, 2 more 9-clawed divine dragons were formed after the 7, making a total of 9 divine dragons. After a period of cultivation, especially in the Myriad God Cliff, where he fought against the figures condensed from the divine power, Lu Ming's divine dragon materialization technique had made another breakthrough. He could condense 9 divine dragon manifestations at once. Moreover, the divine dragon materialization art was even more terrifying with the support of the ruler's divine power, which had awakened the origin divine power factor. The 9 divine dragons pounced at Jin Yuan continuously. Jin Yuan controlled the void-breaking sword and slashed at the divine dragon. Boom! Boom! Terrifying clashing sounds rang out continuously as the 999-clawed divine dragons clashed with the void-breaking sword. Ice chains. Immediately after, Lu Ming cast the ice chain and attacked Jin Yuan. Jin Yuan hurriedly used the void-breaking hand to block it, but Lu Ming wielded his long spear and charged at Jin Yuan. Lu Ming used all his means and forced Jin Yuan to retreat continuously. He was at a disadvantage. The others were shocked. Was Gold Ingot going to lose today? This was a big deal. You want to defeat me? Impossible. Void-breaking sword kill with 9 sword moves. Die. Jin Yuan bellowed. His entire body suddenly emitted a blinding light, and the space between his brows was like a small sun. Buzz! 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 Sword hums sounded, and golden combat swords rushed out of Jin Yuan's forehead. There were a total of 8, and with the one from before, there were 9 in total. Whoosh! 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 The golden void-severing sword continued to slash out, and the sword light whistled through the air with astonishing power. Lu Ming's expression changed. He swung his long spear continuously to block the golden sword. Clang! 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 The golden combat sword continuously slashed at the long spear. The long spear trembled violently, and the terrifying power of the void split through the long spear and spread to Lu Ming's entire body. Cracks appeared on the green scales on Lu Ming's body, and blood seeped out. Moreover, the long spear in Lu Ming's hand was cracked. What a shocking power! Lu Ming frowned. This spear was a high-grade level 9 divine artifact, but it could not block the other party's power. Kill, die! Jin Yuan shouted and controlled the void-splitting sword to continue slashing at Lu Ming. He wanted to kill Lu Ming in one go. Ice chains. Lu Ming controlled the ice chain and flew it back, enveloping himself in it. Clang! Clang! The space-severing sword struck the ice chains, producing clinking sounds and sparks. However, the ice chains were completely fine, only leaving a few marks on them. It's so hard! Jin Yuan's eyes narrowed in shock. The void-severing sword was said to be able to sever the void. Its destructive power was shocking. In addition, there were 8 of them attacking at the same time. The power was even more terrifying. However, they could not cut through Lu Ming's ice chains. I don't believe it. Cut, cut, cut. Die! Jin Yuan shouted and controlled the void-breaking sword to slash at Lu Ming wildly. However, it was blocked by the ice chains in the end.